Welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Annalie, also known as Woolen Buggers, and I'm a crochet artist and pattern designer based in Malmö in Sweden. I'm actually in Alex and mine's new apartment in Malmö right now. We don't really have any furniture, so I'm sitting on the only piece of furniture we have, which is a futon, in this yellow room that's gonna be our office combined hobby room. So today I thought we would crochet together. I'm currently working on the bookworm sweater, which I started around the time I was filming my last video, so like exactly 1 week ago. I finished the front and the back. I have the sleeves to go. I'm a little bit not sure about what to do with this checkered part. I'm running out of brown yarn, so I'm trying to be creative over here. But I'm not sure what I think about this. I might actually frog all of this. While I was thinking about that earlier, I started the other sleeve, which I'm gonna be making striped. And I think this works a lot better than the checkers. Really excited about this design. I think it's really cute. Do you see this worm? I put little glasses on her. I think she's so cute. And then on the back, I was gonna write my favorite books, and then I realized writing in surface crochet or embroidery for that sake is kind of annoying. And then the only red book, big book that I could think of that I really like is Crying in H-Mart. So honorary spot. And then the only book name that was short enough for me to be arse writing is w.i.p. And I'm a big Haruki Murakami fan. I know he's a little bit problematic, but I found a lot of inspiration in his works, and so of course he had to be featured on this sweater in some way. 1Q84 is not my favorite Haruki Murakami piece. My favorite Haruki Murakami piece is probably the Rat trilogy. I love Dance 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 in particular, but let's talk about Murakami some other time. And speaking of patterns, I'm actually hosting a 50k followers giveaway right now on my Instagram. And if you win, you're gonna win all my patterns for free. The only thing that you need to do is comment on the post what you're looking forward to in 2024. So yeah, you can do that if you want. But enough about that, let's get started on my Q&A and crocheting. The reason that I'm making this video is because I want to clear the air around my handle, Woolen Buggers. Ever since my account started growing, I've got a lot of questions. Not a lot, I've gotten a couple, like 2 or 3, that have let me know that buggers is quite an offensive word, have wondered why it's in my handle, which is a totally valid thing to ask. So I'm grateful as well for bringing this to my attention, because when I started this account with Alex in 2021, I had no idea that buggers could be viewed as an offensive word. When I started Googling it, it sort of sent me into a panic because the origins of the word are quite homophobic and quite vulgar, and it's obviously not something that I want my account to ever be associated with. But then it's also not associated with the everyday use of the word in the UK, which is like a cheeky swear word, I've learned from my followers. So thank you for enlightening me. But I've had a lot of my British followers let me know that buggers is something that parents might say to their kids if they're being naughty, like they're cheeky buggers. Or someone DM'd me to let me know that they say buggers in the first Harry Potter movie, which honestly was such a relief. If they say it in the first Harry Potter movie, I feel like it's okay for it to be in my handle. But just know that it was never my intention to offend anyone, and I'm really sorry if I have, but I hope that this explanation will sort of clear things up for you. So I just want to say that once and for all, the word buggers in Woolen Buggers stems from the popular fishing fly pattern, the woolly bugger. Literally, when we were making this account, I thought it would be a fun wordplay on the woolly bugger fishing fly pattern, since it has the word wool in it. The woolly bugger fishing fly, I'm guessing the bugger in that case is like bug, right? Because fishing flies are supposed to look like insects, like bugs. And now you're all like, okay, like I get it. Buggers, bugs, fishing flies, okay, but what does that have to do with crocheting? What does that have to do with you? Great question. I thought I would take you all back to the beginning because I got a lot of questions as well about how I started crocheting, when I started crocheting, how long I've been doing it for. The answer is that Woolen Buggers was an Instagram page, or is an Instagram page that Alex, my fiance, and I started back in 2021, and this was right when we had just been, exploring our pandemic hobbies. I finished my first crochet piece in March, maybe, I think. And it was a patchwork cardigan, the Harry Styles one. And I was so happy when I finished that piece, and I was like, this is it, this is my hobby now. And Aleks had found his way back into fly tying. And he has been fly fishing for basically his entire life and been fly tying for a really long time as well. And he's a really great craftsman. Like, his flies are really stunning. I've tried it and it's so hard because flies are tiny. So you have to be really precise and really know what you're doing. He's very confident in his craft, but he's never really recognized it himself as something that other people might appreciate. So starting a separate page for that encouraged Aleks, and for us it was important that we were doing something together and that we were growing something together. And to us there were many similarities to the hobbies that we were doing, fly tying and crocheting, even though they are seemingly very far apart. To us it was very much about process, about being willing to experiment, about being curious, and being okay and accepting of failure. Aleks was getting back into something, I was starting something, so we were very curious about the process, and we're trying to have very much of a beginner's mindset. And even though crocheting and fly tying were not that far apart in our world, it was very far apart for the social media algorithm. And as soon as we started on Etsy and I started crocheting more consistently and designing my own patterns, we realized that it was really, really hard reaching people when we were doing two very different things and posting about them on the same account. And so we took a mutual decision for me to take over the Woolen Buggers handle, and for Aleks to start his own socials. If you want to look at Alex's work, you should. He's on YouTube and Instagram under the handle Fishy Aleks for his fishing, and then for his fly tying, he's on fishyaleks_flies. So I got the most questions about my design process, so I'm gonna start with that and try to be sort of chronological in order. So starting from where I find my inspiration, I got quite a few questions asking who my favorite artist is, where I find my inspirations for my patterns. My inspiration comes from my feed or people and things around me, and that's both, you know, in the actual world, but also very much in the digital world. I will mention a couple of artists that really inspire me. My all-time favorite artists, who are both my favorite artists for the same reason, sort of aren't directly related to my crochet work, but explore an artistic and philosophical idea that I've been very interested in since my teens. I've always been interested in human stories and storytelling. And I've always been very fascinated by the things that we leave behind and the story that they tell about us and our own worldview. And I feel like two artists that really explore that concept is Sophie Calle and Anne Kawada. Sophie Calle is a French artist that does these amazing and sort of morally dubious art projects that I find very interesting. And she had a project where she was hired as a hotel maid in Venice, and she would document and record the rooms that she was cleaning. And so that included like looking through notebooks, reading letters, checking what people left in the wardrobe, what people put in the trash, and that's all collected in a book. And obviously in this book, like the items and the letters and whatnot aren't directly connected to a person. So they're like connected to room 30, for example. But they still very much tell a story of whoever was living in that room during that time. And there's something so unsettling and like vulnerable and honest in the traces that we leave behind, in the things that aren't really meant to be seen by other people. And I love that. And I'm so curious about what those traces are. Like, who are we as humans and what does it mean to be alive? And it's a very big reason to why I've always been very active on the internet. Like, I've always been on internet forums, I always had blogs, and I've always liked that aspect of the internet, like being able to have an internet persona, even if it means that I've never been then fully anonymous, because people have always been able to look up or read or whatever, see what I'm thinking about and what influences me, and I think that's sort of the point. And another artist who explores this is Anne Kawada, who does this in a much less morally dubious way and a lot less controversial way than Sophie Calle. But Anne Kawada is another one of my all-time favorite artists. He was a Japanese conceptual artist who lived in New York, and he sort of explored the concept of meaningless data. My favorite project is called like I Woke Up, I think, and it's a huge collection of postcards in which the only information that's on the postcard is when he woke up that day, and then of course, you know, where the stamp is from and what the postcard is actually of. These are huge collections of data that are like so personal to him but are completely useless to anyone else. Like, why would I care about when he woke up during a specific day. I think it says a lot about him, and it says a lot about his art. I was so inspired by this in college. I also did a documentation of the things that were on my desk every day for 3 days. And that was also meaningless data, but I thought that project is actually one of my favorite projects that I've done visually to this day, because I thought that was really sort of a self-portrait. It was sort of a snapshot in time, you know? But that's not very crochet related, is it? But I just wanted to say that those are two artists that have explored this topic that I've been really interested in for a long time. Next step in this process after finding inspiration is like making my patterns, right? So I got a couple of questions about how I make my patterns, when I started making patterns. So the first ever pattern that I wrote down was the fishy Aleks pattern, and that I wrote in the end of 2022. I designed it, I think, in early 2022, but I hadn't dared writing down the pattern for it because I was really intimidated to write patterns for a long time, because I learned how to crochet through YouTube, so I wasn't very used to reading patterns. But then as I was doing more and more pattern tests and seeing how other people were writing patterns, how they were structuring them, what information needs to be included, I started feeling more confident in writing my own patterns. So that's a big recommendation to those of you who are curious about pattern writing, is to buy or test a lot of patterns. It's a huge help to see how other people's do it, and then you can choose what to add or what to detract for your own patterns. All of my patterns start with sketches, which is another question that I got, which is how I make my illustrations. And so I sketch everything out in Procreate on my iPad before I get started. And that includes the motif and then every single possible color combination that I can think of that I think might be suitable for this pattern. And then I also got this question that was like, what are things you consider before committing to a new design? And for me, that's feeling very good about the design, like the motif, the colors, double checking I have the yarn, rethinking if I don't have the available yarn. And I do this because I currently have quite a lot of yarn in my yarn stash, and I want to use that up before I get new yarn. And as for committing to pattern tests, I do pattern tests if I have time, if I like the design, obviously, and if I feel like the pattern can teach me something new. Like, I'm still on a learning journey, and I think everyone is, and so there's a lot of the crochet world that I have left to explore. And I like to test garments that are very out of my comfort zone. So more tight-fitting clothing, or clothing that has more intricate stitch work. That's been a huge help to me in exploring new techniques and learning new things, and just getting out of my comfort zone. So then we enter the stage where, okay, I found my inspiration, I've committed to a new design, and I started crocheting. And I got a question that was like, do you watch anything in the background when you crochet? And yes, I do. I love watching video essays. Starting with Emma in the Moment. I'm sure you all know and are familiar with Emma already. They are a super talented YouTuber as well as knit and crochet designer at the handle Made in the Moment. But Emma in the Moment is a channel where Emma creates video essays on crafts related drama. And they're all super fun and very well researched. I'm really, really impressed by them. I don't know most topics that Emma comments on, but they're still super interesting to listen to, and I would highly recommend you check out their channel. And then for non-crochet related video essays, my favorite video essayist is Mina Lay. Mina Lay is a YouTuber who focuses on fashion history and makes these really exquisite videos both on historical fashion but also popular culture. So yeah, that's what I'm usually watching or listening to. And then finally, I've started a new project. I've started crocheting. How do I stay motivated to finish? And how long does it take me to finish? And those are good questions, and I wish I had proper answers. Honestly, for me, I just hate having things be unfinished. So whenever I start something, if I truly believe that the finished piece will be something that I'll wear, it might be something that I'm giving away, I work really hard to finish it. If it's something where halfway I'm like, oh, this is not turning out the way I want, then I probably just leave it in a drawer and never pick it up again. And how long it takes me completely depends on what project it is and how much time I have. The sweater that I'm currently working on, I've been working on for exactly 1 week, and I have like half of the sleeve. I have like one full sleeve left. I have half of both of the sleeves left. I would say 1 week, a little bit more than a week for a sweater, assuming that I'm also working, would be quite standard. I'm gonna end this section with some rapid fire questions that are crochet related. Favorite stitch, half double crochet. Favorite fiber, definitely cotton. Favorite yarn weight, definitely a round weight yarn. And I very, very rarely go below 3 millimeters. That's also a question I got if there's a yarn weight I dislike or avoid. And yes, that's basically anything that's under sport weight. Favorite yarn? This is a really hard one because I'm not really a yarn snob at all, but I also do want to get better at sourcing better quality yarn that is sustainably made. Really interested in learning more about this, but haven't done the research myself yet, but I feel like I should. But if anyone has articles for me to read or video essays for me to watch, feel free to comment or link them down below. I would be really curious to hear more about this topic because I know too little about it. But the reality right now is that I have a yarn stash that is full basically of very cheap yarn. And I had someone ask about my recommendations for affordable yarn, and I will just answer that my stash is mostly Drops cotton yarn. What I'm currently using right now is Drops Paris. It's very affordable. They have a bunch of different colors and it's very easy for me to get, like it's very accessible for me. That said, I don't think Drops Paris is an exquisite yarn. Like it's not unpleasant to work with, but it's also not like I'm, woo, like this yarn is amazing, you know? It just does what it's supposed to do, I guess. That's my most used yarn, and so I will also say that that's my favorite yarn. I'm sure there are a lot of cotton yarns that are a lot better that are out there, but I haven't tried them. I've been asked for collabs by different yarn companies, but I've chosen to decline if I don't actually get paid for it as well, because I think the whole industry, you know, big yarn companies asking small designers to create pieces and market their yarns for no payment other than exposure and free yarn, like, seems fucked up to me. Like, I don't want to be a part of that. So that's why I haven't, you know, collaborated with some of the bigger yarn companies. And no shame for doing that. I totally get the appeal, but I'm not in a place where I need to do that because I can afford to buy my own yarn. And so, yeah, I'd rather do that than contribute to weird industry standards. Then I got quite a few questions about my favorite project to this date. And I will have to say that it's the bean sweater. I love the bean sweater. I mentioned it before, but it has a lot of sentimental value to me. Very happy with how it turned out. So yeah, the bean sweater. And then I got a lot of questions about knitting. Have you tried knitting? What do you think about knitting? What is your opinion on knitting versus crocheting? I have never tried, that's not true. I have tried knitting, but only when I was a kid. Because my mom knits, or she used to knit. And so when I was a kid, she taught me how to knit. And this is the only picture or the only evidence I have that I once did it. And it's something that I really want to learn. I've been really curious about knit color work, but I feel like also like there's so much in the crochet world that is left for me to explore and discover before I delve into knitting. There's never been a defining moment where I'm like, okay, now I need to learn how to knit because I can't crochet this. Like, that hasn't happened yet. So when that day comes, I will learn how to knit. And then the last crochet related question that I thought I would answer, because it's sort of a nice segue into the next segment of this video, which will be non-crochet related questions, is do you have any advice for wrist, elbow, and forearm pain when crocheting? I have a little bit of wrist tendonitis that will occasionally flare up, but I've never actually ran into any problems when crocheting. I use these hooks that are labeled as ergonomic hooks, so maybe that could be of a help. But I also am a rock climber, and I think that helps a lot because that means that my wrists, my forearms, and I guess my elbows as well, like, get worked out in different ways. I think that helps when I'm crocheting as well. So my advice would be start rock climbing. Please, I'm so curious about bouldering. When did you start and how often do you climb? Climbing is like the only form of exercise that I've personally found really fun and that I personally have never tired of. So it stuck with me throughout the years. And I started climbing in 2017 when I was living in New Mexico. My school campus was actually very close to a very beautiful bouldering crag. Having that outdoors space was amazing. So I actually started climbing outdoors, and then I haven't stopped climbing since then. But for having climbed since 2017, I'm not a very strong climber. I'm like a consistent V5, occasional V6 climber. But I feel like grades are very arbitrary because I feel like Sweden grades are harder than US grades. Like, I would be a pretty consistent V6 climber in the US, but then in Sweden, I'm like a consistent V5 climber. and I've been on that plateau for like a couple of years. Previously, I've gone one, maybe twice a week because it's been like over an hour commute. But now that we live closer, I'm looking forward to training more consistently. Even though I mainly boulder, I only boulder right now. I actually prefer sport climbing, or I used to prefer sport climbing, but I haven't done that in a very long time since I moved away from the US in 2020 and thus also lost my access to rope climbing gym. I still think about lead climbing and falling sometimes, and it freaks me out. Lead climbing, I love it, but it's also my biggest fear, so yeah. And then I had a question that was like, aside from crocheting, what are your other hobbies? So aside from rock climbing, I like to cook, I like to bake, I like to play board games, and I also write a lot. Recently, I've also spent a lot of time wedding planning because Alex and I are getting married this summer in July. And that's sort of a great segue into the next set of questions, which are more personal. So I got a question about how long have Alex and you been together? How did you meet? Alex and I have been together since the winter of 2017, 2018, and we knew each other before that as well. So we actually met for the first time through a mutual friend 2 winters before that, so 2015, 2016. The New Year's 2015, 2016 was the first time we kissed, but I was living in the US during the time. I was finishing high school in New Mexico, and Alex was in Sweden, and I was home for winter break, so that's why we met. And we were way too young to pull off long distance. I was 18, he was 17. We both had other relationships during that time, like between the time we first met and fell in love, and then the second time we met and fell in love. And when we reconnected in 2017, 2018, that was actually on Tinder. So I hadn't dared messaging him. I was home for winter break. I hadn't dared messaging him on Messenger because I thought he was still with his ex-girlfriend, and then we matched on Tinder. So we grabbed coffee, and then we spent basically every single day of my winter break that year together. Meeting him again very much felt like pushing play on a button. Like, it felt like nothing had ever changed. It felt very natural to be with him. And yeah, it just instantly felt like we were meant to be together and that we had a future together. And I know that sounds super cheesy, but it was true. Now we're getting married, so I was right. I got questions if I'll be doing crochet related things for the wedding, and yes, I will be crocheting my wedding dress. I haven't started it yet. I've thought so much about this, and I also follow this girl, Crafter's Muse, on Instagram. She has been preparing for her wedding for this entire past year, I think. And seeing her work on her wedding dress and her bridesmaids' dresses and all of the wedding decorations gave me so much inspiration, but also intimidated me so much. So she did amazing, and I'm like, oh my god, I could never. If you have crocheted your wedding dress or know someone on Instagram that has crocheted their wedding dress, let me know, because I'm looking for all the inspiration I can get. So I had to stop filming yesterday because my phone died and also the sun disappeared, but I wanted to show you guys my progress. So I decided, first of all, to frog the checkers and start a striped sleeve, and then I finished the other striped sleeve. And we're gonna try it on. I was right at a segment that was the one that I was saving for last because I feel like it's the least interesting, and that's the segment with questions about me and like my personal life. So that's what we're gonna talk about. But this is how it looks. I actually think the stripes work very well. I think it's cute. Yeah, I'm excited about this pattern. Let's continue and see if we can finish. Probably not, considering I'm very bad at talking and crocheting at the same time. But we're gonna delve into questions about me. Age 26, personality type. This was actually a very sweet comment, thank you. My personality type is INFJ. Favorite music genre, I actually listen to a very wide variety of music. I'll link my Spotify down below. All sort of fall within the category of indie something. My top artist for 3 consecutive years has been James Blake. I love both his electronic stuff, but also his vocals. Serious, I'm guessing favorite TV show, then The Office, Succession, anything by Nathan Fielder. Do you do content full-time? No, I have a full-time job as an innovation manager. And then I got a question that I thought was kind of funny, which is what led you to living in Sweden? And I guess it's not super obvious that I'm Swedish, but I was born and raised here, so that's why I live here. I lived in the US for 5 years for school. So I finished high school in New Mexico, and then I went to college just outside of Boston. And when COVID hit in 2020, and because I was dating Aleks and we were doing long distance, I decided to move back home so I could be with Aleks, and so I could be with my family. Then I got a question about the best places to visit in Sweden for first timers. I mean, I guess you should go to Stockholm because it's our capital city. It's a beautiful city. I don't know Stockholm very well though. Like, I visited a couple of times, but mostly for day trips and mostly to like visit the US embassy to renew my US visa. But my favorite museum in Sweden is there. It's Fotografiska. If you're visiting Stockholm, I would highly recommend going there. And then if you're going down south, I guess you would visit Malmö, which is the city that we have moved to. I love Malmö. I don't know how fun it is to visit though. Like, if you would visit the south of Sweden, I would just go to Copenhagen because it's pretty much the same, except everything is bigger, a little bit cooler, and I guess a little bit more expensive. And then if you want to do nature stuff, you should go very far up north and do some hiking. If you're visiting Sweden, I would definitely recommend like taking the train through the entire country if you have the time. Like, fly to Copenhagen, cross the bridge to Malmö, which is like half an hour away, take the train to Stockholm, which is like a 4-hour train ride, and then from Stockholm you can go up north and go hiking. So yeah, I think that was everything that I had for you today. I obviously did not finish the sleeve considering I've been filming for like 6.5 minutes. But I'm gonna finish this up and I'm gonna post a tester call as soon as I'm done. Thank you so much for watching. If you made it all the way to the end, it means a lot to me. As always, feel free to comment, like, subscribe. And yeah, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye!